was a tough pill to swallow. Randy realized that by giving an overly optimistic completion date, he had set himself up for failure from the start. Finish early, you're a hero. Finish late, you're a zero. Let me tell you about Randy, a contractor who learned the hard way that setting a realistic completion date is critical. Hey guys, it's Karalynn and welcome back to the podcast. And today we're doing another chapter of Trust Your Gut, my book on residential construction contracts. Today is chapter 8, Project Schedule. All right. Finish early, you're a hero. Finish late, you're a zero. Let me tell you about Randy, a contractor who learned the hard way that setting a realistic completion date is critical. He was hired by the Sanders family to build a custom home, and everyone was excited about getting started. The Sandersons had big plans. They'd picked out the perfect lot, envisioned a smooth move-in over the summer, and were planning to switch their kids from private school to public school in the fall once they were settled. Everything hinged on the home being completed on time, and Randy assured them that it would be ready. But as often happens, things don't go according to plan. Randy had given them an ambitious completion date, one that didn't account for potential delays. Sure enough, the project hit a few bumps, including unexpected supply issues and a freezing cold snap in Texas that halted work for days. By the time summer rolled around, the house was far from finished. The Sandersons were left scrambling. They had only signed a lease on a temporary apartment until the date they had been promised, so they had to extend it and pay for extra months out of pocket. And since the house wasn't ready, they couldn't move in, which meant they had to keep their kids in private school for another semester instead of switching to public school, adding even more unexpected cost. On top of all that, they continued to pay the mortgage on a home they weren't living in yet. As you can imagine, they were furious. When the project was finally done, the Sandersons weren't ready to move in. They weren't just ready to move in. They were ready to take Randy to court. They filed a lawsuit demanding compensation for the extra costs they had incurred, extra rent, additional private school tuition, interest on their mortgage. Since Randy didn't finish on time, they argued that they should be reimbursed for all the financial fallout. In the end, they managed to reach a settlement. Randy had to pay some compensation, but not nearly as much as the Sandersons were demanding. Still, it was a tough pill to swallow. Randy realized that by giving an overly optimistic completion date, he had set himself up for failure from the start. The Sandersons had planned their lives around the promise, and when it wasn't kept, everything unraveled. In this chapter, you'll learn why setting a completion date is like setting a goal. It needs to be realistic, be flexible, and account for the unexpected. We'll cover how to build in buffers, communicate the completion date is a target date rather than a guarantee, and avoid making promises that could lead to costly legal battles, damage reputation, and unhappy clients. Project schedules. While the payment terms we covered in the last chapter may be the most important part of the contract for you, the schedule is the most important part for the homeowner. Managing project schedules can sometimes feel like navigating a ship through stormy seas. Delays are part of the job, but how you handle them can make or break your business. In Randy's case, a rare Texas freeze caused pipes to burst and flood a house under renovation. The Sandersons family, displaced and crammed into a small apartment, anxiously counted down the days until they could finally move into their new home. But when Randy's project's timeline stretched beyond what he had promised, the situation quickly escalated. What they started as a delay turned into a full-blown legal battle, with the Sandersons suing for all the extra costs that they had to cover while waiting for the house to be completed. And that is why setting realistic completion dates is crucial. Setting a completion date is akin to setting a goal. It's important, but it needs to be realistic. Perhaps more importantly, a completion date should be a target, not a guarantee. Ensure that it is attainable and include provisions for adjustments such as extensions for delays caused by weather, material shortages, or unforeseen issues. Otherwise, you risk breaching breach of contract claim that could cost you dearly. Setting expectations is key to avoiding disputes. Start by discussing a realistic timeline with the homeowners. Explain that construction is inherently unpredictable and that delays are a common part of the process. Include a section in the contract that outlines how delays will be handled and what steps you will take to minimize them. This way, the homeowner knows what to expect and are less likely to be surprised or frustrated if things don't go exactly as planned. The following represents some of the best practices for setting completion dates. Offer an estimated date. Instead of having a hard, fast deadline, provide an estimated completion date. Clearly state in the contract that this is an approximate, not a guarantee. This way, if delays occur due to unforeseen issues, you won't be held liable for a breach of contract. Make it clear that while you will make every effort to meet this date, it is not a firm deadline, and that missing it doesn't constitute a breach of contract. This way, if delays occur, you're not held liable as long as you're actively working towards completion. Utilize change orders. When unexpected events like a flood throw a wrench into your schedule, use a change order to adjust the timeline. This document should detail the reasons for the delay and outline a new completion date. This helps protect you from claims of breach of contract. Make sure all change orders are well documented, ideally with a homeowner's signature. But if getting a signature isn't possible, especially if the client's upset or uncooperative, even a text message or an email confirming the change order can be sufficient. The key is having proof that changes were communicated and acknowledged. Build in a time buffer. Construction projects are rarely straightforward. If you estimate a job will take 2 months, consider quoting 4 months. This buffer helps you handle unexpected issues without blowing the deadline and makes you look like a hero if you finish early. Selections and deadlines. Another key factor in keeping your project on schedule is ensuring the homeowner sticks to deadlines for selections, like choosing materials, finishes, or fixtures. Your contract should clearly state the project timeline depends on the client making timely decisions. For example, you might write that the homeowner has 2 weeks to make their selections. If they take longer than that, extra days will be added to the project completion date. Some contractors go a step further and include a clause that imposes a fee for delays, such as charging $100 for each week the homeowner fails to make their selections within the specified time frame. While this approach can be a hit or miss, it helps you emphasize that keeping to the schedule is a two-way street. Yes, you'll do your part to meet deadlines, but the homeowner needs to do theirs as well. If they drag their feet on making decisions, it's only fair that the timeline gets extended and they may incur extra cost. This is why it's so important to have a conversation about the schedule and expectations up front. Homeowners need to understand that it's not just a matter of signing the contract and stepping back. They have to be engaged throughout the process. When you ask them to make decisions, they need to respond promptly. If they don't, it's going to hold up the project, and they can't expect the original timeline to be met when they're the ones causing the delays. Including a fine for delays can be a good way to encourage respect for the timeline and everyone's time. It sends a clear message. Don't waste the time of the project or the people working on it. And even if you have this clause, you're not obligated to enforce it. Think of it like a cancellation fee. It gives you the option to charge for delays if you choose to, but it's mainly there as a tool to keep things moving. The way the homeowners are more likely to understand how important it is for them to make timely selections, and it ensures everyone is on the same page about what needs to happen to keep the project on track. Pro tips for keeping your projects and sanity on track. Here I go again. Success often comes down to managing expectations, handling changes, and keeping communication clear. Here are some key strategies to help you navigate projects more smoothly. 1. Under-promise and over-deliver. Always aim to exceed expectations rather than just meet them. Set realistic timelines that allow for a buffer, so if you finish early, homeowners will be thrilled in singing your praises. On the flip side, if you finish late, you risk disappointed client and possible negative review, or worse, a legal dispute. Setting realistic goals from the outset can make all the difference. 2. Align milestone payments with project phases. Coordinate milestone payments with specific phases on the project. This helps maintain your cash flow and provides a clear framework for both you and the homeowner. When the payments are tied to tangible progress, it is easier to keep the clients informed and manage expectations. 3. Communicate clearly and regularly. Regular updates are essential for keeping homeowners informed and avoiding surprises. Consistent communication about project process, potential delays, and any issues that might affect timelines builds trust and minimizes the risk of disputes. Always document these updates, whether via email or formal notices, so you have a record of if disagreements arise. Include a non-consequential damages clause to protect yourself from being liable for indirect costs that might arise due to delays, like extra rent, storage fees, or other consequential damages. Make sure your contract includes a non-consequential damages clause. Simply include this sentence in your contract to serve as a catch-all for whatever the homeowner may try to blame you for. I'm not responsible for any consequential damages that may arise from the project. This ensures that if the project timeline overruns, you're not on the hook for expenses beyond the scope of work. More on this in Chapter 14. By following these strategies, you can better manage project schedules and reduce the risk of legal disputes. Balancing realistic expectations with a clear contract terms and effective communication will not only keep your clients happy, but also help maintain a smooth and successful operation. Being prepared, transparent, and proactive can turn potential pitfalls into opportunities for building stronger client relationships and a more resilient business. Key takeaways. Address what a realistic schedule is before you start the project. Add more time in writing via change order when needed. Communicate early and often. Hope is not a strategy. Managing project schedules is about more than just setting a date and hoping to hit it. You need to build in flexibility, make sure everyone understands what is expected, and be prepared to adjust things if they don't go as planned. Randy's story is a cautionary tale for any contractor who thinks they can set an optimistic completion date and hope for the best. In his case, promising a tight timeline without accounting for possible delays led to frustrated homeowners, legal battles, and financial consequences. The Sandersons had planned their lives around the timeline, and when it wasn't met, they sought damages. If Randy had taken the time to set realistic expectations, build in buffer time, and communicate clearly with the Sandersons from the start, he might have avoided a lot of headaches, not to mention the lawsuit. By implementing strategies like clear selection deadlines, realistic timelines, and effective communication, you'll set yourself up for smoother projects, happier clients, and a stronger, more resilient business. The pandemic sure threw a lot of wrenches in our industry, but some of those challenges could have been mitigated if your contract had some language regarding a plan for the unexpected, which is what we'll cover in the next chapter.